Welcome to the Anti-Trafficking Response Academy by International Rescue Committee. Today, we'll explore the issue of domestic servitude. Domestic servitude happens when a person works in someone's home. For example, as a cleaner, a caregiver, babysitter, or cook, but is not free to leave or stop working and is treated unfairly or abusively. It is a form of exploitation and human trafficking. In this session, you will learn about the definition of domestic servitude, the scale of the issue, and who is most affected. We'll also look at the most common settings of this exploitation and recent trends. Domestic servitude is a form of human trafficking in which individuals are compelled to work in private households under exploitative conditions. Victims may face restricted freedom, coercion, abuse, long working hours, and little or no pay, often with limited contact with the outside world. It is not to be confused with domestic work, which means work generally done in or for a private household. While there may not be much data specifically on domestic servitude, it is often discussed more generally as exploitation in domestic work or labor trafficking for domestic work. Domestic servitude is recognized internationally as a form of human trafficking and a serious human rights violation. In the Palermo Protocol, it falls under the categories of forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery and servitude. In some countries, it is criminalized as a specific offense separate from broader trafficking provisions. Globally, around 75.6 million people, mostly women and many migrant workers, are employed in domestic work, representing about 4.5% of the global workforce. Data on domestic servitude is largely underrepresented in trafficking research and analysis. But according to the International Labour Organization, ILO, about 81% of domestic workers are employed informally, without legal protection or contracts. The global estimates of modern slavery indicate that at least 1.4 million people would be exploited in domestic servitude globally. The clandestine nature of domestic servitude, taking place behind closed doors and inside private homes, is a major factor that both enables exploitation and makes identifying cases and gathering accurate statistics difficult. Domestic servitude exists across all regions of the world, though it is most often detected in the following contexts. In upper middle and high-income countries, it is often facilitated through migrant labor. In low-income countries, it is also found in elite households, including in caste-based societies. Cases have also been reported in diplomatic households, where oversight is limited and accountability is low. According to the International Labour Organization, 70% of the 70 million domestic workers worldwide are women. Research shows that only 6% of domestic workers are covered by any form of social security. In terms of domestic servitude, women and girls make up the majority of victims. Irregular migrants and women migrants are particularly vulnerable. Research shows that victims of domestic servitude often share similar gender, age, and regional profiles with victims of sex trafficking more than with those of other forms of labor trafficking. This is because both sex trafficking and domestic work are highly gendered, disproportionately affecting women. In some cases, family members with disabilities, for example intellectual disabilities, are being exploited for domestic servitude. There are also instances where people with disabilities in care facilities or asylums were recruited and subsequently forced into domestic work. Children under 18 are also forced to work in households, often denied education, rest, and freedom. According to the ILO, there are 17.2 million children worldwide in domestic work, many of whom face exploitation and abuse. In domestic servitude, exploitation can appear around different settings, affecting how victims live and work inside private homes. People are exploited in care work, where they are forced to provide in-home childcare, elder care, or support for people with disabilities. It can include household labor, such as cleaning, cooking, laundry, and other household tasks under exploitative conditions. Most domestic workers live with their employers, making their workplace also their living space, which limits their autonomy and keeps them available for non-stop service. Special attention is needed for domestic servitude in diplomatic households. Domestic workers in diplomatic or consular homes face unique risks. Legal protections can be limited because diplomatic immunity often shields employers from local labour inspections or accountability. On top of that, the high-profile nature of these households can make authorities or advocacy groups hesitant to step in, leaving workers vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. In 2022, a landmark legal decision in the UK addressed such abuses involving ambassadors' households. The UK Supreme Court ruled that domestic servitude in a diplomatic household is not protected by diplomatic immunity. Trafficking can also occur in the au pair system, where young people may be overworked, unpaid, or abused, often without proper legal status. Far from home in a foreign country, sometimes speaking a different language, and with limited oversight from the au pair agency, these young workers may feel isolated and powerless. As a result, they may not challenge unfair treatment, turning what should be a cultural exchange into a situation that amounts to domestic servitude. Domestic workers may also face sexual exploitation or be forced to perform other types of labour, such as working on farms or household-run businesses, where exploitation and abuse are common. Exploitation can take many forms, often combining sexual exploitation, forced labour, and domestic servitude. In the context of domestic work, exploitation often extends beyond the specific tasks workers are compelled to perform. It encompasses broader working and living conditions, including the quality of food and accommodation, the length and intensity of working hours, the regularity and manner of salary payment, the range of assigned tasks, and the attitudes and treatment of both the employing family and society at large. Behind the convenience of digital apps and the gig economy, new forms of dependence and vulnerability are emerging, echoing the hierarchies of past domestic servitude. Online platforms, social media, and messaging apps are now major recruitment channels for domestic workers and au pair. They make it easier to connect but also bypass oversight, allowing traffickers to lure people with false promises, seize documents, or impose exploitative conditions. Without effective regulation and oversight, the expansion of these platform-based household jobs could normalize precarious labor conditions, leaving workers increasingly exposed to exploitation. A mix of legal blind spots, weak enforcement, and a culture that undervalues domestic work has left many domestic workers, especially migrant women, at risk of exploitation and trafficking. A fair domestic work economy must ensure the respect of labor laws, justice, and remedies for abuse, while challenging prejudice and discrimination. Learn more about human trafficking, its complexity, and anti-trafficking efforts through our other educational videos and resources available on our website. Thank you for joining us in this crucial mission.